Welcome to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast, brought to you by Stratum. I'm your host, Griffin Hamilton. This is the show where I interview industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights into modern-day facilities management. From hospitality to commercial real estate and everything in between, we'll learn what it really takes to succeed as a facilities manager. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. I am your host, Griffin Hamilton, and today I've got the pleasure to speak with Clarence Carson. Clarence, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay, actually. It's snowing in Chicago, which is kind of silly when you think about it. It's March, and it was just 68 degrees 2 days in a row. I'm sorry, 58 degrees, and now it's back in the 20s and snowing. So it's ridiculous.
Yep. I don't want to rub it in, but I'm in Atlanta and had a couple of days of 75 and sunny, so I hope that streak continues, and I'll let you guys keep the snow up there.
Cool. Thanks, Griffin. I really appreciate you sharing that. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Not to rub it in, like I said, but well, hey, Clarence, other than you being from Chicago, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into facilities?
Yeah, originally I'm actually from Detroit, Michigan. You can imagine being in Chicago is definitely complex. You have to root for certain teams here, and that's hard to do at times when you're from Detroit. Me being a Lions fan, of course, we lose a lot, but it's what it is. And also other teams as well from Detroit. So originally from there, but live here in Chicago. I grew up in Detroit in our family business, and our family business was construction, renovations, demolition, real estate, and a lot of other areas as well. So actually third generation in construction, and moved to Chicago after going to school at Michigan State University, Go Green, for undergrad and grad school for construction management with a minor in facilities management and urban regional planning. I've been in Chicago ever since.
Got it. And I guess going back really quickly to the sporting affiliation. So I'm in Atlanta, so we finally got our title here recently with the Braves, which is near and dear to my heart, but it almost makes up for 28-3. So I don't feel too bad for Lions fans when you don't have to go through that heartbreak. But
well, I mean, look, so I'll say this too about the Braves. Being from Detroit, you grew up watching WGN and also TBS, so you end up watching the White Sox a whole lot. Grew up watching Frank Thomas. Still, even though I'm a Tigers fan, so I'm a Tigers and Sox fan, and also watching the Braves. So my hat collection was definitely blue and orange, black and white, and blue, red, and white. So I totally get it. So covered all the bases.
Yep, there you go. Well, again, I certainly appreciate you making the time to come on. I know we've.
I have to highlight something though with that. Being a Lions fan and being used to so much losing definitely builds your character. Just saying that too.
Is being numb part of your character? Does that add to your character?
Yeah, you use the word hope a lot, and I catch myself saying the word hope a lot now. And it's probably rooted in my football dreams being squashed year after year.
Oh man, well. I will say, like I said, I don't have too much pity for Lions without the 28-3 nonsense we had to deal with down here. But I guess we could go and perhaps when I'm up in Chicago one day have a beer and go sulk.
Yep, that'd be awesome.
But I guess going into post school and getting into facilities, getting your feet wet, obviously had quite an illustrious career and made it up into the CFO, Chief Facilities Officer at Chicago Public Schools.
I always say the small F. You got the Chief Financial Officer, you got the Chief Facilities Officer. I say the slightly smaller F, a little lower. I mean, it's still uppercase, but it's just like like super. What do you call it? The larger F, smaller F. Yeah, just leave it like that, I guess.
Yep.
Not lowercase though.
Not to say that it's not nearly as important, but I understand where you're coming from there. But I guess tell me about that journey, how you got into facilities and then made your way up and progressed into that position in such a large public school district. Yeah,
so very interesting path. Again, most of my life outside of coming out of school has been working in construction management. So construction management, either GC or CM or even a program manager or owner's rep. So a lot of my path has been in that, really understanding projects, understanding the fine details of them, like the contracts, the estimates, the schedules, knowing our clients, knowing what neighborhoods need, and then building upon that. As I progressed from the construction management side, it went from fully being engrossed in tall buildings, wide buildings, the details of buildings, specifications, and so on, to then being an internal audit. So I'm kind of like, you ever heard of being T-shaped? This phrase called being T-shaped. So you go really deep in one area, and then you go wide, you spread wide and learn other areas. So after really digging into construction for many years, I then became an internal auditor of capital and construction at an energy company. That kind of refined even more so my skill set in contracts, processes, and procedures, and policies. And you can imagine audit is his own space. People don't really like auditors. I found I didn't know that going into it, but I still recall when I was in the gym one day, lifting like 1,000 pounds, of course.
Of course, yeah.
At the company I was at, and I was on the bench press, and this guy walked over and was like, "Hey, you need a spot?" I was like, "Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it." And I'm just lifting a million pounds. They said 1,000,000 pounds, right? 1,000,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then this guy was like, "Hey, what department are you in?" I was like, "Oh, I'm in internal audit," and he walked away and left me there. So I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had no idea internal audit was like that. But again, it added new skill sets to my toolbox, new tools in my toolbox. And then later on, I migrated to being a global risk consultant to Allianz Insurance Company, a global company out of Germany, and again doing risk assessments for underwriting, major underwriting for this global leader in insurance, AGCS. I say all that to say it added, to my universe of construction, facilities, real estate, internal audit, and dealing with the cost and the fraud and everything else as well, the issues that can come up with that, the contracts, and then also the risk management that comes through insurance, but just risk management itself. So all of that create a really well-rounded person, a leader. So I have children. I have a daughter who's 10, and I have a son who's 4 now. But at the time, before I joined CPS, my daughter was probably in kindergarten or first grade. No, kindergarten or first grade at a little school here in Chicago called McDade Classical School. And I say, I'm going to get to your answer. I'm going to get to your question, I promise. And while there, being this really involved parent, I'm like that parent going around high-fiving kids, and the principal knows who I am, and like we always hoped our parents would be, right? Really involved. And one day they had a meeting at a PTA saying, "Hey, we have this opening for the treasurer," and my daughter at this meeting said, my dad will be the new treasurer of our school. Vote for him." And everyone kind of looked, and they voted for me to be the treasurer because everyone knew who I was. And next thing you know, I'm like this figure around the school now, like really bought into where the school was going, and then where our city of Chicago school district was going as well. Really learning that because I'm not from here again. Next thing you know, I went to some higher ups in our school and said, "Hey, has the school ever been renovated or expanded upon?" It only goes up to 6th grade. What do you all think about me presenting a plan to you all about this? And this group, the LSC, which is a great, leadership. The LSC itself is a great leadership in every school. Local school council said, "It's never been done before. We've tried, but sure, if you want to try." So I put together an estimate, a schedule, a design. I surveyed all the students, little, elementary school students, the staff, the neighborhood itself, brought in some leaders, went down to the school board, March 2018. You can look this up, I believe, on the YouTube page for the district, me presenting with everyone. And I presented this whole plan, all choreographed, and the school board loved it. Not only did they love my idea about our one school, I also brought the fact that there was 2 more schools like ours that also needed renovations, and I had all the plans for each one crafted out. They loved it so much that we fast forward, May 2018, the mayor came out to our school, within March to May, came out to our school, did a ribbon cutting. They okayed our renovation and our expansion of the building, as well as the other 2 schools. And I say that to then say the next step. I got a phone call in May saying, hey, we'd like you to interview for a job at Chicago Public Schools. And I said, to do what? They said, to be the chief facilities officer. I said, of what? They said, of all the schools. I said, how many schools? And it kind of went into that. And came in for an interview, and that changed my life. I interviewed with so many different leaders there, and they all wanted me. The thing they shortly said was, we want you to do what you did for those 3 schools. The care and concern you put for the students that were there, the staff that was there, the built environment itself, all the plotting and planning and the choreography you put in place there. We want you to do what you did for those 3 schools for all 600 campuses, all 1,300 buildings, all 4,000 employees in the facilities department, all 355,000 students, all 74 million square feet. They didn't say all that, but you get the gist.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I became the chief facilities officer of the 3rd largest school district in the country, bringing all my skill set into it, and the rest was history.
I mean, that's incredible, and it's, I think, important to point out the beginning of that story, right? Of how you had so many different skills and the journey that you took. It isn't necessarily the quote unquote traditional way to get into that type of leadership position, if there ever is a traditional way to do so. But you took a little bit of every piece or a component of every job or career path that you had, and it all came together managing the 3rd largest school district in America. And that's absolutely incredible. And another point that I imagine the success you have with that first go around with those handful of schools, because your daughter was going to the school and you were familiar with the students there. You said you surveyed the students, you knew the community. It was very much a familial feel to it, from the sound of it. And I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but that played a huge part into the care that you had about the actual buildings and the properties and the entirety of that project. Not to say you wouldn't elsewhere, but whenever your family, your daughter is going there, I'm sure there's a lot more to it there. And having that type of, I guess, that mindset, I'm sure carried over to the rest of the public school district once you got into that position.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, look, there's some parents that may go a little overboard when it comes to what they want for their kid and their region, however they raise their points. That was not my goal. My goal was to have a structured approach to not just for my kid, but all the little kids in that school. That school is a small school, but it was for classical students. It just happened to be, gifted, smart little kids. But it was 210 students. It was 96% black students. I think it's 2% Hispanic, 1% Asian, 1% white school. So it's a really small school compared to the other schools in the district. But every school matters. And you're right. Me understanding the students and the communities have helped out a lot for what the district wanted to have in a leader. And, me being on the other side of the fence, I've always built buildings for the communities itself. You look back at my degree, it was built that way on purpose. It was always built around the building itself, how that building affects the community that surrounds it, the urban planning side of it, and how that building is meant to run forever. So again, construction, facilities management, and urban planning being my base degree, going together. But, it was a risk, going into the job too. I'll say that part too. I want to make sure to highlight that. I think I was the 5th chief in 6 years. Oh, wow. So turnover is very high in facilities. So I remember when I made my first year, I threw a party. I was like, oh yeah, this is great. Mama, I made it, kind of a thing.
Survived.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was so much energy I wanted to bring to it. It was so much work to do, and I truly cherish my time serving. Right. I mean, the main word of everyone in facilities. You can't be in facilities if it's about the money. That's just not what it's about. You're not in facilities if you're looking for the shine either. Right. This is even though this may seem like a shiny kind of a moment being on a podcast. But it's really talking about the work itself that really went into it. And a lot of long hours. Being at work until 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And I'm serious. Being in the office, even during a pandemic, which I know we're going to talk about, even 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning myself, to make sure that, schools are ready, staffs are ready, that our team is ready to succeed and our buildings are safe. So even before that, we're the essential workers. And that goes from the chief facilities officer on down. And being a leader, is important to me. And that does not mean going home early. You're on if your team is on. During the pandemic, I'm in the office or I'm in the field looking at buildings because my team is also in the field looking at buildings, make sure they're safe. And to use a phrase that hasn't always been used the best way, lead from the front. Truly, you want to lead from the front and be an example of what you want your team to be. And for me, no shade or anyone else, of course, but for me that meant being in the office. If my team's out there, I'm out there.
Yep. It's hard to lead by pointing and say, go do this without you being the one that's willing to roll your sleeves up, get your hands dirty, and do it yourself as well. And that is a pretty good transition here on really diving into what we're really going to discuss in a lot of detail, and that's how to operate, what made you successful, and a point that we're really going to drive home today is the ability to communicate and collaborate between various departments. It's not just facilities. It's not just your small organization, or in your case, large organization. It is the ability to communicate with your team, procurement, HR, really the entire organization. And so let's start there. How did you go about, and what have you found to be most beneficial in efforts to collaborate and communicate with other areas of the organization?
Yeah, so I'm going to put this in two different buckets. And for those that are listening, this is really important to me that I want to convey this. There's an internal collaboration and there has to be an external collaboration, especially during the pandemic. I think it's going to be most important for us still going forward, all of us, no matter what we're doing going forward. The internal collaboration wasn't there for the facilities department before I joined. Really, how does the facilities department truly touch upon a school district? Usually, facilities is in operations, and usually operations is separated from education. And truly understand that K-12 is about the education of students. I understand that, everyone understands that, that's true, that comes first. But also make sure that the learning environments for those students is safe. CPS, we'd say safe, warm, and dry is really important as well. Learning can't happen without the structure, and especially if you're in person. The structure being the four walls, the roof, the conditioned space itself. So we are an integral part of that component to make sure that their success. But with that, facilities a lot of times gets left out. There are districts around the country where facilities is not a part of cabinet, the executive cabinet leadership. Before I joined, facilities was not a part of executive leadership, the cabinet at Chicago Public Schools. It was something I had to press on because all these fires would happen or issues would be raised, even pre-pandemic, about the conditions at school, cleanliness, air quality, the engineering of the buildings itself, pest control, security of the building, whatever it was. It always came up as an emergency for facilities, and they weren't really pulled into the higher level planning of the district. So that's something that I push for a lot. But I talk about collaboration. So really key for collaboration is between facilities and procurement and HR. Especially during the pandemic, but even before that. Facilities, a lot of that deals with contracts. At least in the district I was in, we dealt with, we had the IFM program, Integrated Facilities Management program, but also a lot of vendors. We're very vendor heavy, either through our JOC initiative, job order contracting, or other means as well, for custodial, pest control, and so on. So their contracts come up to be due, every couple of years. But who's also maintaining and managing those contracts during the year as well is really important. What we did with partnership with the procurement department, we actually hired on our own contract compliance manager within our department. That person was more of like a connection point between us and the procurement department to truly manage the KPIs and metrics we put in place on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis to make sure our vendors are meeting their metrics and holding them accountable. Truly managing it, but being in partnership with the procurement department. Really key for us. But at the same time, we recognize that the procurement department is one who creates solicitations, write the contracts, put things out to bid, manage the whole process, but it really takes our input into that, and as well as the legal department, of course. And the other one is HR. Look, the pandemic has really blown up the procurement department of all the other departments, hiring, the loss of staff in procurement. So procurement department has really had to lean on cooperative agreements or what do you call it, piggybacking as well, because they don't always have the staff and legal staff to also do that. HR is another one of those areas as well, which has been hit really hard by the pandemic. Departments need staff, but the hiring process is slow and sluggish. I know at CPS, though we've done better with the background check process, but it was very slow, because you have losses in the other agencies that actually review those staff. So when someone's applying to your department, but they're also applying to work at Walmart or applying to work somewhere else, they're clearing faster for the other companies than they are for those districts. So for that reason, we're having a hard time. So really being in collaboration between HR and procurement / law is really important for the success of the district, the facilities department especially. And otherwise you just can't succeed. And also budget department as well for dollars, right? Cycling those dollars in to be used as properly as possible for all the more recent expenditures that the department hadn't had to buy before. Sanitizer was not a thing in 2019, truly, that people were buying. It was just soap and water and that kind of thing. But so many new things we've had to buy, the procurement departments, the facilities departments had to buy, that through this partnership really needs to be there for success.
Yeah, and a couple, and I want to go back to this, and don't let me forget to go back to the perching and just there are different programs out there that have been released that aren't being used as they should be, and kind of money is being left on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll touch on that here in a second, and going back into the relationship with procurement and HR in particular. What are some best practices that you guys followed, and you alluded to some KPIs, or some KPIs that you were following closely to ensure that you did have that type of relationship, you were collaborating, and you were putting your best foot forward?
Now, is this a part of like a 13-parter or 8-part program? We're going to revisit this like every 2 weeks or every other month, or basically, because this is a lot of information to give here.
Well, that's good.
So one of the things too, I'm going to highlight and come right back to it as well. I said internal partnerships with external ones that we did at CPS that were really beneficial for us as a department. I met with nearly all the major school districts in the country every week on Fridays to talk to them about those lessons learned during the pandemic. Things we bought, our staffing issues. We cried together as well when we had losses of staff as well during the pandemic. Our strategies, that helped us out a lot externally, and I would hope that others do the same. No matter what department you're in, especially if you're in facilities, you don't have all the answers, not anymore. So because of that, please lead on your county or your local universities, if you're in K-12, or your other school districts as well locally, or reach out to when you go to conferences and maintain those relationships abroad, outside of your state, because there's so many lessons to be learned that we took in Chicago from Broward County, from Seattle, from New York, from Houston, from Detroit, Miami, all over, because we were all at different places around the country when the pandemic hit. So we talked about some of those lessons learned we had. So we, again, also with that team we had internally, we also met weekly on our strategic purchasing. That's something that we didn't do before. We changed our business model from this IFM model, which is, again, we can talk about this a whole other time. IFM being Integrated Facilities Management to FMO, Facilities Management Office Model at CPS, where we controlled all the buying, all the products, and all the staffing came to us directly. You can imagine being way more hands-on, even during the pandemic, but otherwise, meant you need to know where every product is coming from, when you're going to receive it, where it's going to be loaded, where it has to get out from the distribution out to schools as well, and also the dollars needed to fund it. And that's where our budget relationship, the budget office at CPS, as well as the procurement office and us, work together very closely. There are so many KPIs and metrics that we put into place as well, which I can ramble on about a long time but it's a lot of lessons learned I can give.
And I guess the follow up there, because you did speak to budgeting, and you guys really took ownership of that in conjunction with that type of relationship with procurement, right? How did you manage all of the different funding that was available and stay on top of that? Because again, that is something that we see time and time again where the resources are available, they're just not being taken advantage of. And I'm sure that's just due to some potential poor communication or just not having the knowledge of it.
Well, so, again, I'm going to highlight here the fact that I left Chicago Public Schools in November of last year. So I'm now on the private sector, so I want to highlight that part as well now. But you're exactly right. When I was there was a lot of money coming from the federal dollars, from the state as well. That came about due to the pandemic. We received funding like we've never received before. I think coming up, this coming up year, again, we're going to hit a whole new high when it comes to capital development, capital construction projects, as well as facilities. But what we did was we really look. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was tough. These dollars are coming in from all these different areas, and we're somewhat being targeted for special projects. Some of which may not have been our priority as a department. Some of which may not have been our priority as a department, but a lot of them were. I would say we took advantage of every dollar we could as an organization, as CPS. No doubt about it. Wherever the dollar is coming from, we use it to target our issues. Now, some of them may not have been some of our long-standing issues, like ADA issues as well. And we have long-standing ADA issues, making sure our buildings are all compliant, that still aren't all the way there. Our BAS systems, being able to truly manage every building's controls automatically, is still not there yet either, which is something else we wanted to really target. We also wanted to target for a long time. Cannot snap our fingers and use the dollars for it the way we would like to. But we were able to use the dollars for what they were intended for, which is indoor air quality, making sure our mechanical systems are the most up to date, making sure we have the highest filtration our buildings can allow, the purifiers, those units being in all the classrooms, our water quality. Of course, we always press on our water quality being high. Changing out water fountains to bottle fillers, that stuff is not cheap either. Making sure our windows are providing the most airflow as possible as well. All these things we were able to target with those dollars. We just couldn't do it all the things we wanted to do, but we're still working on it even now. When I say we, I still say we like I'm in the district. Don't get me wrong, it happens all the time. Because I'm still a part of it. I so cherish the time I had there. But at the same time, it was time for me to migrate on. I had some really good opportunities. New leadership came in. We were on our third CEO in 1 year, 2021, and that was rough. So I'm glad I was able to, transition out. My team is still there, and they're all doing a fantastic job still.
Yeah, and I think that the areas that you pointed out, being very much putting the student and the youth in front of mind, where there's so many studies out there that show the direct impact that indoor air quality has on learning, and not only from students but also faculty members, right? Where we recognize here over the last couple of years, hopefully it didn't take a pandemic to recognize the importance of teachers, but with my mother having been one, I do, me being biased, think that they've been underappreciated and still are to an extent, but wanting to make sure that their environment is just as beneficial for their own health benefits and productivity, and really shaping our youth, which I think is a pretty important job.
Totally agree.
But yeah, every initiative you brought up just leads back to that being a huge point, and really interesting to hear how you guys address that.
I just want to highlight the fact that we had $3.6 billion in deferred maintenance. Even with all the down, I want to make sure to highlight that part. So you go from 1.8 to 3.6 really quickly by allowing it to stay still. And you can imagine there are a lot of prerogatives that happen in every city and every district as well, where dollars are somewhat targeted and steered certain ways. And the deferred maintenance, things break. I used to tell people we're in the break fix business. Things don't stay solved forever with us. That we're there to be responsive. So you can never fix it all, but I trust that the district, as well as other districts, have learned a lot. The built environment is not going to be the same anymore, and expectations are very heightened, as they should be. As they should have been for a good long time. But now we've learned a lot, and hopefully we never go back to what it was like before.
Yep, absolutely. Well, as we're wrapping up, Clarence, I do have one last question for you. I ask everybody this, but who or what has had the biggest impact on you and your career?
Ooh. All right, I'm gonna say the easy answer. My dad.
Okay.
My dad is Clarence Carson as well. I'm Clarence Carson. My son, his name is Clarence Carson also. My dad actually grew up in Alabama. Him and my mom didn't go to college, but they were high school sweethearts. Later on in life, they moved up to Detroit, Michigan, and worked like everyone else did in that migration up north, and had 5 children, and decided to be entrepreneurial and be innovative. And that meant really taking a risk and a bet on himself. Now, maybe that's also what led me to take the job at CPS, knowing that I was the 5th chief in 6 years, taking a risk. But he really believed in community. He really believed in jobs and putting people to work, but also giving them the honor of work itself as well. So he hired throughout the communities he worked in, he owned businesses in, he had projects in. And he really believed in construction, development, and that work itself. And that resonated through all the staff and all the projects he built. Now, he passed away in 2004, my last year of grad school. So I didn't get a chance to work in the family business and so on. But what I did do that resonated with me so much, and I connect right back to it. I enjoy construction. I enjoy facilities. I enjoy projects. I enjoy working with people very collaboratively, and that drives me to want to make an impact now in everything I do. But really, with a built environment, right? However, I can interact with the built environment, and even now. So when I took some time away from Chicago Public Schools, I then joined a facilities management consultancy company that's, housed, national headquarters is actually in Toronto, but our base of headquarters in the United States is actually in Chicago, Illinois. And I'm the senior vice president of that for USA. And we're looking to do great things here actually with facilities management, really helping our clients. And I always say our mantra is supporting clients and the communities that they serve receive the highest facilities management services possible. And I believe in that. And I'm so excited to do that work every day and bring what my father and my mother instilled in me, that faith in work, the faith in community, that faith in people, into what I do even now. So yeah, that's, my dad, I guess,
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that, and I could see your passion, and that's why I was really excited to have you on today, because I know you're very decorated in the industry, have a phenomenal background, but probably more importantly, in my opinion, is the passion. It's like the foundation of why you got here. You understand your why, and you have that passion that is certainly contagious. So again, Claire, certainly appreciate you coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Gonna have to have you on again sometime, and there's a million other topics we could talk about. So looking forward to staying in touch, and we'll be talking soon, hopefully on the podcast once again.
That's awesome. Looking forward to it. There's a lot of stuff to talk about in facilities and operations.
Absolutely. Well, hey man, we'll be talking soon.
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Make sure to subscribe for future episodes and visit our website, stratumcommunity.com, for more facilities management content.